So friends, let's continue with the previous session on the topic mechanism of concentration and dilution of the urine. Now in the previous session we have discussed how the kidney will form a dilute urine whenever there is a excess of water is present in the body or the plasma osmolarity is less. Now in the today's session we have to discuss very important portion of that topic, how the kidney produces a concentrated urine whenever there is a water deficiency. Now this is very important function of the kidney. Okay, so many times there is a increased loss of the water in comparison to the intake of the water, so that may lead to the dehydration. Okay, as for example, say any person who is working in a dry or hot environment, that means in a summer season. Okay, at that time there will be a loss of the water. Okay, lot of the loss of the water in the form of the perspiration and the evaporation, that is in addition to the loss of water via the urine and via the excreta. So that excess loss of the water, it will require the intake, proportionally to the intake will increase, and unfortunately if the water intake is not increased, then that may lead to the dehydration. So now that can be prevented up to certain extent by the kidney. Okay, so where in that situation when the loss is more but the intake is less, at that time kidney will try to conserve the water in the body. It will prevent the water loss via the urine. Okay, so that is by forming a concentrated urine. So to form the concentrate, there are certain requirements that briefly we have discussed in the previous session, that we have to discuss in detail today. So one is the hyperosmolar medullary interstitium, that is operated via the countercurrent mechanism. That means the first requirement to form the concentrated urine to prevent the water loss is to have a medullary interstitium hyperosmotic. And second thing is the role of the ADH. That means once this hyperosmolar medullary interstitium is achieved, then the ADH will reabsorb lot of the water from the distal tubules, preventing the water loss via the urine. Now coming to the countercurrent mechanism. So these are the mechanisms that will help to create the hyperosmolar medullary interstitium, and also it will maintain that hyperosmolarity. Now this topic is very important, and there is a frequently asked question in the exam. So the counter current, it is known as counter current because here the fluid is moving in opposite direction. So the fluid moving downward in the descending limb, and then the same fluid will move up through the ascending limb. So this counter current mechanism, it is operated at the loop of the Henle or the loop of a vasa recta. So you can see this figure. So this figure shows this nephron where this is a loop of the Henle. This is a descending portion and this is a ascending portion. Similarly, the loop, it is made by the peritubular capillary of the juxtamedullary nephron. So this is the descending part of the vasa recta and this is the ascending portion. So here in both the loop, the fluid, it is moving in opposite direction. So see here, initially the tubular fluid in the nephron, it will move through the descending portion, and then the same fluid will again move against the gravity in opposite direction upwards. Okay, so this, the movement of fluid, it is in opposite direction, so that will create a counter current. Similarly here you can see the plasma that is flowing downward, and then the plasma again flowing through the same tubules, capillaries upward. So that is again in the opposite direction, so that is again creating a counter current. Now there are two components of the counter current mechanism. One is the counter current multiplier, that is formed by the loop of Henle, and counter current exchanger, that is formed by the vasa recta. So this counter current multiplier is basically concerned with the creation of hyperosmolar medullary interstitium, while this exchanger system in the vasa recta, it will help to maintain the hyperosmolarity in the medullary interstitium. Now just going in detail about these various steps of this mechanism, just have a look over the hyperosmolar medullary interstitium. Now you know that the normal plasma osmolarity is 300 milliosmoles per liter, and that is almost same for the interstitial fluid in all parts of the body. But as far as the osmolarity of the interstitial fluid of a medulla, renal medulla is concerned, it is much higher. Osmolarity of interstitial fluid in the medulla, it is much higher than that of the plasma and the other interstitial fluid. And this hyperosmolarity, as I have told, it is created by the countercurrent multiplier system. Okay, In addition to that, urea's recycling also help to create that, and that hyperosmolarity is maintained by the counter current exchanger. Now there are certain factors that will contribute this hyperosmolarity of the medullary interstitium. So just we will see briefly and you will better understand as we'll go stepwise. So one factor is active transport of the sodium and the co-transport of various other solutes out of the thick portion of the ascending limb of the loop of Henle in a medullary interstitium. Second, active transport of ions from the collecting duct into the medullary interstitium. Then facilitated diffusion of the urea from the inner medullary collecting duct into the medullary interstitium. And then to some extent diffusion of small amount of the water from a medullary tubules into the interstitium. So by this old factor, ultimate goal is to increase the solute within the renal interstitium. So that will create a hyperosmolarity. So now we'll discuss both all these factors: counter current multiplier, counter current exchanger system, urea recycling, and the role of ADH in detail. Okay, how they are helping to form the concentrated urine. So first is counter current multiplier system that will create the hyperosmolar medullary interstitium. So it is called as multiplier. Counter current means flow of fluid in opposite direction, and it is multiplier because here it will multiply the osmolarity within the interstitium. So there is a repetitive reabsorption of sodium chloride by the thick ascending loop of the Henle and continued inflow of a new sodium chloride from the proximal tubule into the loop of Henle. So every time it will multiply the solute within the medullary interstitium. So just you can see better by this figure. So you know this is a loop of Henle. Okay. Let us suppose this is a descending portion and this is the ascending portion. So first thing is that you know the ascending thick portion of the loop, it is highly permeable to the solute but impermeable to the water. So what it will do, it will reabsorb lot of the solute via the active transport and the co-transport mechanism. So it will increase the solute concentration within the renal interstitium. And on the other side, these proximal tubules via this descending limb, it will provide a new sodium chloride every time. Okay, so again this will be reabsorbed here. So reabsorption of sodium chloride and various solutes from here, and the provision of a new sodium chloride and the other solutes by these tubules to the ascending limb. So this repetitive reabsorption and repetitive provision of the new sodium chloride and the solutes, it will increase the solute concentration within the renal medullary interstitium, and it will produce the hyperosmolarity here. So this is a multiplier system. So we have to see the various steps how this interstitium will become hyperosmolar. So just let us start with the various steps of that. So now let us assume that the loop of Henle, it is filled with a fluid that is having a concentration of a 300 milliosmoles per liter. Okay, that is similar as that of the renal interstitium. This is just assumption. Descending limb, ascending limb, and the interstitium all are having a same osmolarity. Then coming to the next step. So that shows the active pump of solutes from the thick ascending limb of the loop of Henle. So you can see this thick ascending limb of the loop of Henle, it is highly permeable to the solute. So the solutes from here, they will be reabsorbed into the interstitium. So you can say that from the 300 milliosmoles per liter, the osmolarity will decrease to 200 because this limb is permeable to the solute. So there will be loss of the solute, but it is impermeable to the water. So water will remain here. So by this mechanism, it will create a concentration gradient of around 200 milliosmoles per liter between the interstitium and the tubular fluid. So this is the one step. The next step is the tubular fluid in a descending limb of the loop of Henle, and the interstitial fluid will quickly reach to the osmotic equilibrium. Okay. So by the reabsorption of solutes from here, this created a 200 milliosmoles per liter of the concentration gradient. Okay, and here initially it was a 300 milliosmoles. isoosmotic fluid, but because this descending thin limb, it is permeable to the water but not to the solute, so it will lose the water will reabsorb and it will flow into the interstitium. So the osmolarity of this fluid descending limb will also increase from 300, it will reach to the 400, so it will reach in equilibrium with that of the interstitium. But because of the loss of fluid from here and addition of water here, so this osmolarity will not decrease, because there is a continuous flow of the solute from here to here that will maintain this osmotic gradient. So clear? So this is how the tubular fluid in the descending limb will reach to the osmotic equilibrium with that of the medullary interstitium. The next step is again the additional flow of a fluid in the loop of Henle from a proximal tubules, that is causing a hyperosmotic fluid in the descending limb and the ascending limb. So now let us say that the new fluid that is coming from the proximal tubule into the loop of Henle, and that will be isoosmotic, because the fluid leaving the proximal tubule is always isoosmotic. Let us say that is a 300 milliosmoles. Okay, so now this 300 will come, new fluid will come, so that will push the initial portion, initial osmolarity to the ascending limb. So यहाँ पे जो 400 पूरे के पूरे में था, उसमें से कुछ 400 will push to this region, जो कि यहाँ पे 200 था initially. Okay. So now this new fluid will come, osmotic fluid will come, and it will push the hyperosmotic fluid into the this ascending limb. So here again you can see this osmotic gradient that was a 200, now it will come to equilibrium. So again, because this is permeable to the solute, so there will be a loss of the solute from here. Okay, so that you can see in the next step. So again the solute will be lost from here. So initially it was 400, here also it was 400, but because of the reabsorption of solute here, again it will create a concentration gradient of a 200 milliosmoles. So every time as the new fluid is coming to this descending limb, ascending limb, every time this ascending limb will reabsorb the solutes and it will create the concentration gradient of this 200 milliosmoles. And so every time it is adding the solute here. So initially it was 300 here, now it has reached to the 500 here. Again next step is comes the turn of this descending limb, where again there will be loss of the water. There will be loss of the water from here, so that is reabsorption of water, so that will again cause the osmotic equilibrium with that of the interstitial fluid. Okay, so here again you can see this osmolarity of this descending limb and interstitium are again come to the equilibrium. Okay. So in this way, every time this portion it is losing the solute, adding the solute to the interstitium, but this portion will try to maintain the osmotic equilibrium, and this will provide the hyperosmotic fluid to the ascending limb every time. So in this way, all these steps, step number 1 to 6, they are repeated over and over till the medullary interstitium will reach to 1200 or a 1400 milliosmoles per liter. Okay. So from 300 initially it was a 300 as we have seen in the first step, now it has reached to the 1200. So the medullary interstitium has become a hyperosmolar. Okay, so ultimately there will be a concentration gradient of a 200 in between this ascending limb and the interstitium, but the osmotic equilibrium between this descending limb and the interstitium. So in simply, by these repeated steps of reabsorbing solute from here and provision of a new solutes by this portion to this ascending limb, this will increase the osmolarity till the inner medullary osmolarity will reach to 1200 to 1400 milliosmoles per liter. Okay. So in this way, this mechanism, counter current multiplier, it will create a hyperosmolar medullary interstitium, creating the osmotic gradient for the water to be reabsorbed from the distal tubules that we will discuss further. So now just show the summary of all the steps that we have discussed previously. So the first step is, let us assume that the loop of Henle is filled with the fluid that is isoosmotic, and it is in a concentration equilibrium with that of the medullary interstitium. That means 300 milliosmoles as that of the plasma in all the parts. Now the next step is that the ascending limb, especially the thick limb, it is permeable to the solute, so it will cause a reabsorption of the solute from the tubules into the interstitium. So that will create a concentration gradient of around 200. So यहाँ पे जो 300 था वो 400 हो जाएगा और यहाँ पे 300 में 200 हो जाएगा. So that will create a concentration gradient. Okay. Now again, as this concentration gradient is created, next turn comes to the descending limb of Henle. Okay. So this part is permeable to the water, but not to the solute. So it will cause the reabsorption of the water. So increasing the osmolarity here from 300 to 400, and this osmolarity will reach to equilibrium with that of the interstitium. Okay. Again, next step is that the new fluid from the proximal tubule, it will come into the descending limb, and that will be isoosmotic with osmolarity of 300 milliosmoles. So that will push the hyperosmotic fluid here into the ascending limb. So again, this osmotic equilibrium, it will cause the reabsorption of solute from the ascending limb here. Okay, so reabsorption of solute from the ascending limb again create the osmotic gradient, concentration gradient of a 200 between the ascending limb and the interstitium. Okay. Then again in the descending limb there will be reabsorption of the water, so that will cause the equilibrium of a concentration between this tubular fluid and the interstitium. So these steps are repeated over and over till the concentration of a interstitium it will reach to 1200 to 400 milliosmoles per liter. Okay, so that is creating the hyperosmolar medullary interstitium that you can see in comparison with the first step, initial part 300 here. Now it has reached to up to 1200 milliosmoles per liter. Okay, so these are the steps how the hyperosmotic medullary interstitium will be created by the counter current multiplier system. So this will help to osmotic movement of the water from the distal tubules into the medullary interstitium, preventing the loss of water and causing the concentrated urea. Now, in addition to the counter current multiplier system, urea has also important role in creating and maintaining the hyperosmotic medullary interstitium. So urea contributes around 40 to 50% of this osmolarity of the medullary interstitium, and urea is passively reabsorbed from the tubules, and this urea contributes because mostly whenever there is water deficiency, that will increase the ADH. Okay? And because of that, large amount of the urea are passively reabsorbed, especially from the inner medullary collecting duct. So this all step just we will see, I will discuss in the figure. So just look at this figure again. This is the nephron, this is the loop of Henle, and this is the collecting duct. Okay. Now the proximal tubules, as far as the urea is concerned, the filtered urea, it starts reabsorption from the proximal tubules, where around 40 to 50% of the urea are getting reabsorbed. Okay. Then coming to the descending limb of the loop of Henle and the initial part of the ascending limb, this portion is permeable to the urea, but there will be no reabsorption here. There will be only secretion of the urea. So in this portion you can see there is a secretion of the urea. Then coming to the ascending thick portion of the loop of Henle and the distal tubules and the collecting duct up to the outer medullary collecting duct, you can see this is bounded by the bold line. This nephron tubules are bounded by the bold line. This portion, it is impermeable to the urea. Okay. So by the time the tubular fluid will reach to the inner medullary collecting duct, urea concentration will be much higher. Okay. One reason is that these portion are impermeable to the urea. Second is there is also addition of the urea by this portion. Okay. And third thing is that here there is a reabsorption of the water from this portion in presence of the ADH, but not reabsorption of the urea. So that will again increase the urea concentration here. Okay. So by the time fluid it is in the inner medulla, the urea concentration will rise much. And this portion, the renal epithelial cell of this inner medullary collecting duct, contains the urea transporter channel, number of the urea transporter channel. So through this channel, urea transporter A1 and urea transporter A3 channels, the urea will diffuse from a tubules into the renal interstitium. So that will again help to create this hyperosmolar medullary interstitium in addition to the counter current multiplier system. And then most of the urea again after creating this, they are secreted here into this part of the loop of Henle. so that will recycle. Okay, so there is a urea recycling that will help to create this medullary interstitium hyperosmolar and also to maintain that. Okay, so here is the reabsorption via urea transporter proteins, and here there is a secretion via the urea transporter channel A2. So in this way, urea will help to create the hyperosmolar medullary interstitium and also in maintaining them. So this how the medullary interstitium will become a hyperosmolar. Now come to the next part here. It is the counter current exchanger. So the function of this counter current exchanger system is to maintain that hyperosmolarity created by the multiplier system. Okay, prevent the dissipation of that hyperosmolarity. Okay, so this is the function that is served by the vasa recta. So this counter current exchanger operated at the vasa recta that are a specialized tubular network of this juxtamedullary nephron. So vasa recta, by this counter current exchanger, it will minimize the washout of solute from the medullary interstitium and preserve the hyperosmolarity of the medulla. And this is possible because of the U shape of vasa recta again, like that of the loop of Henle. So vasa recta do not create this medullary hyperosmolarity, but they do prevent it from being a dissipation. So now you just saw this vasa recta loop of Henle, mainly of the juxtamedullary nephron. So cortical nephron, basically they are concerned with the formation of the urine, but these juxtamedullary nephron, basically they are concerned with the various counter current system, counter current multiplier and the exchange. So this is the loop of Henle, this yellow color, and this is the vasa recta. Okay, this is the downward portion of the peritubular capillary, and this is the upward. Okay, the arterial portion, and this is the venous end of the capillary. So that is again making the loop. So that is the vasa recta. So now just see how this vasa recta help to maintain this hyperosmolar in the medullary interstitium, and that is because of its U shape. So let us assume that this is the vasa recta. This is the descending portion and this is the ascending portion. Now you know the descending portion of the vasa recta, when the plasma is moving through this portion, now this portion is highly permeable to the solutes. So as the medullary interstitium is a hyperosmolar, the lot of the solute will diffuse into the this plasma fluid within this descending portion of the vasa recta. So it will increase the osmolarity within this portion. Okay, and it will lose the water. So as the fluid is the movement of plasma is from here to here, it will increase the osmolarity here, but it will decrease the osmolarity here. So you can see from a 1200 or a 1400, it has come to 1000 milliosmoles per liter. But again, by the time this plasma is moving upward, it will do opposite action. So here the water will move into the this lumen, while the solute will leave the plasma. So again this there will be addition of the solute into the interstitium. So जो यहाँ पे 1000 हो गया था, now it will again come to 1200 because of the diffusion of solute from here to here. Okay. So in this way, this vasa recta, it will help to maintain this osmolarity, and that is because of its U shape. Now let us suppose the vasa recta is not U shape and it is a straight. Okay, this is the peritubular capillary, and they will continue as a straight. Then what would be happen? So then what will happen? So because of the permeability of this capillary to the solutes, so every time the solutes will move into the capillary and it will lose the water. So the osmolarity of the peritubular capillary, it will going on increasing, but every time it will decrease the solute from the medullary interstitium. So that will cause that may cause a dissipation of the hyperosmolarity of this medullary interstitium. So simply I want to tell you that the vasa recta, it will help to maintain the osmolarity because of its U shape. If it has to be a straight, then this hyperosmolarity will get dissipated immediately. So now just look at this video animation showing the narration of a counter current mechanism, multiplier and the exchanger system. So this is the loop of Henle, where there is operation of the counter current multiplier. So this is ascending portion that is permeable to the solutes only but not to the water. So solutes are reabsorbed into the medullary interstitium, but water will leave as it is. Okay, so lot of solutes are reabsorbed here, that is increasing the medullary osmolarity. Then comes the thin descending limb that is permeable to the water only, yellow or shows the water, not to the solute. So solutes are being transported to the ascending limb where they will be reabsorbed again. And with this there is also secretion of the urea here. This green ball shows the urea. So water reabsorption here and the lot of solute reabsorption from this portion. So ultimately this will increase the osmolarity of the medullary interstitium. So this was the countercurrent multiplier. Now coming to the countercurrent exchanger that is operating in the vasa recta, that is a specialized peritubular capillary in the juxtamedullary nephron. So beside this loop openly, it is the loop of the vasa recta. This is the descending portion and this is the ascending part of the vasa recta. Okay. So in the descending portion, the water will move out of the tubes, but solutes are being taken here and opposite here. So initially the osmolarity of medullary interstitium will decrease, but again as this will move up, the osmolarity will again going to increase. So by this, the countercurrent exchanger system, it will help to maintain the osmolarity that is being created by this loop of Henle. So this is about the countercurrent mechanisms. So this is all about the countercurrent multiplier and the countercurrent exchange system and the role of the urea. So just have a look over the difference between the countercurrent multiplier and the exchanger. So countercurrent multiplier is operated in the loop of Henle, while this is operated in the vasa recta. Now here the process is the reabsorption or secretion of the fluids, so sodium chloride and the fluids, it is by active process, while here it is by the diffusion or the passive transport mechanisms. This multiplier is generating the hyperosmolarity, while this exchanger system, it will maintain the hyperosmolarity. So till now we have discussed the first step in forming the concentrated urine. So first step, that is how the hyperosmolar medullary interstitium is created and the maintained by the countercurrent multiplier, countercurrent exchange and the urea acid recycling. Then once this hyperosmolarity is created in the renal medullary interstitium, then comes the role of the distal tubules and the collecting duct to reabsorb the water, and that will depend on the hormone ADH, antidiuretic hormone, or the vasopressin. Now you know that this portion of the nephron, it is permeable to the water but only in presence of the ADH. So now as the osmotic gradient is already created, now comes the role of the ADH. So ADH will increase the water channel here and it will reabsorb the water. So water that has to be passed through this, most of the water from here, it will be reabsorbed. So by this reabsorbing the water from the distal tubules, it will prevent the dissipation of water. It will prevent the loss of water in the urine by forming a concentrated urine. So this is all about how the kidney form the concentrated urine in case of the water deficit to prevent water loss and to conserve the water. Now I'm coming towards the applied aspect regarding the ability of a kidney to concentrate or dilute urine. So one of the most important disease that we have to discuss here, it is a diabetes insipidus. Now you are aware about the diabetes mellitus, that is due to the deficiency of the insulin or a resistance to the insulin, where patient will complain of excreting lot of the urine, that is known as a polyuria. So similarly here also in the diabetes insipidus, the patient's complaint will be polyuria. That means patient has to go for a urination frequently with a loss of the large amount of the urine. So that is a polyuria. In addition to the polyuria, patient will also complain of a polydipsia, that means excessive thirst, because the patient is losing a lot of the water in the urine. So the intake will also increase to prevent the dehydration or to maintain the osmolarity. So now depending on the cause, diabetes insipidus is of a two type, central and the nephrogenic diabetes insipidus. So ultimately here the basic cause is that the water is not reabsorbed from the distal tubules and the collecting duct. reabsorption in the proximal tubules and the descending limb are normal, but the late portion of distal tubules and the collecting duct that are not able to reabsorb the water, so they are losing the water in the urine. Now let us discuss both the causes. So one is the central diabetes insipidus. So here the cause is failure to produce the ADH. Here this diabetes insipidus is because of the deficiency of the hormone ADH or a vasopressin. And now you know that the distal tubules and the collecting duct will reabsorb water only in presence of the ADH. If ADH are absent, then they will not reabsorb the water. So because of decreased ADH, that may be because of the head injury or infection, or it may be congenital, where the antidiuretic hormone production by the hypothalamus or is released by the posterior pituitary, it will be decreased. So circulating ADH are less, so that will prevent the water reabsorption from the distal tubules, and that water will lose via the urine. So patient will have a polyuria and secondarily polydipsia. Okay. So the cause is in the center, that means the production of the ADH. That's why it is known as the central diabetes insipidus. And this can be treated by injecting or administering the synthetic ADH. Okay. ADH or desmo, that are known as the desmopressin, that can be made synthetically. So giving this desmopressin to the patient, it will resolve this problem. So coming to the another type of diabetes insipidus, that is a nephrogenic. So where there is an inability of kidney to respond to the ADH. So antidiuretic hormone are normal, its synthesis, its release are normal, but kidney are not responding to that ADH. So because of that, the distal tubules and the collecting duct are unable to reabsorb the water, and that water will be lost via the kidney, via the urine. So again the patient's complaint will remain same, polyuria and the polydipsia. Okay, but here cause is within the kidney. So cause, the abnormalities within the kidney, where there is either failure of the counter current mechanism to operate, or failure of the distal tubules and the collecting duct to respond to the ADH. So because of this, there will be a decreased reabsorption of water from the collecting duct, and it will create a polyuria. Now in both the case, central and nephrogenic diabetes insipidus, the symptoms will remain same, polyuria and the polydipsia, but the treatment may differ. So because of that, first you have to differentiate whether it is central or nephrogenic diabetes insipidus. So for that, the best and simple test is to administer the desmopressin, that is a synthetic analog of the ADH. So after giving this desmopressin to the patient, if the patient is improving, okay, improving, the urine volume is decreasing, then you can tell that it is a central diabetes insipidus. But if there is no improvement in the symptoms of the patient after giving this, then it could be a nephrogenic diabetes insipidus, and accordingly you have to treat. So this all about the applied aspect and the diabetes insipidus in brief. And this is all about the mechanism of concentration and dilution of the urine. And again I am telling, this topic is very important. So with this I conclude today's session. Thank you.